Let's understand getters and setters in JavaScript. So first, let's create a class that is the class person, and this class will have a constructor, and let's say our person has a first name and an age, for example. And now right here we can, for example, say this dot underline first name is equal to first name, and this dot underline age is equal to age. And you're basically always using this underline symbol when you're trying to encapsulate a property, basically. So when you only want to give the possibility to access this property by using a getter and a setter. To some people, getters and setters might seem useless at first, but I'm going to show you the power of them. So if you wanted to create an object, let's say person1, for example, and we're going to create a new person object by saying first name is Jonas and age is maybe 24, we can now say person1 dot first name or dot age is equal to 25. And obviously you could run the code, and now you could also console.log person dot underline age, and if we run the code now we get 25, even though we set 24 for the age when using the constructor. And now we could also say, okay, our age should probably be -3, and this would be perfectly fine. So now let's use a getter and a setter to basically get and set the property. So a getter, as the name implies, allows you to get the property. So we can use get age, for example. And by doing so, we define a getter for getting the age. Inside of here, we are going to use those brackets, and we are going to use a pair of brackets once again right here. And now we can say that we just want to return this dot underline age, for example. So what this method basically, or this getter basically does, is it allows you to get the age by using the age property from now on. So we can, for example, say console.log person1.age, for example. So as you can see, we are using this property right now instead of underline age. And now if we are logging this in a console, we can see we are now getting the age of -3. So as you can see, this is basically the syntax you use for a getter. You use the keyword get, then you use a name, and this can be any name. You could also say whatever you wanted to. So this would work as well. So this is then the name of the getter. And right here, you basically say you want to return the age of this specific object. So in our case, of this object right here. So now let's also define a setter. And a setter allows you to set the value, basically. So let's say we are going to create set, and we're going to say age. And we also want to set the age. But now if we want to set the age, we also need a value to set an age, basically. So we're going to accept a value that the user can enter. And right here, we are going to say this dot underline age. So the age of this person, basically, that we just created using the new person constructor is equal to our value that we just entered here as a parameter. So now we can do so. And now we can, for example, say we want to use person1 dot age. And as you can see, this here is a setter now. So we could obviously use this here as well, but this wouldn't be a good this wouldn't be a good way to do this. So instead of using the property right here, and this underline basically means do not access this property without using a getter or a setter. So basically this is just a convention that tells other developers, please do not touch this property directly, but use getters or setters instead. And in this case, we're going to use obviously the setter to set our age to -3. And if you run the code right now, you see the same result. So it doesn't really change too much, right? And I know at first it might seem pretty useless to a lot of you, but what you can do inside of a setter, for example, is you can do some logic or implement some logic that allows you to validate those values. So we could, for example, say if value is greater or equal to 0, then we can set this.age equal to value. And else we could, for example, console.log not valid, for example. And now if we are just going to run the exact same code, we will get not valid because we basically have an error and our value will still be 24. So a setter and a getter is definitely something that you should implement in your code to basically validate logic and just reduce the risk when writing an application, for example.